All right, it looks like almost everyone has made their way to their seats, so we'll get started. Hello, everyone. I hope you all had the chance to mingle and enjoy a grilled cheese or two. There'll be an opportunity for plenty more of that following our panel discussion. But I'm thrilled to be the one to welcome you all to our first in-person event in over 3 years. If you don't know me, I'm Hannah Jennings, one of the event organizers of Tech in Motion. For over 10 years, Tech in Motion's mission has always been centered around bringing the tech community together to connect, learn, innovate, and inspire one another. Today, we'll be talking about AI and its significance in 2023. Tonight, you will hear from our incredible panel as they debate how AI is transforming the way software developers work. Don't worry, after the discussion, you'll have the opportunity to ask our experts all your burning questions, so be sure to hold those until the end. Following our live Q&A, you will have the chance to continue networking and get to know our panelists a bit better. Before we get the conversation started, I am thrilled to welcome Max and Esteban to the stage. They are from our founder and creator, Motion Recruitment, and they're going to share a bit more about the current state of AI and the hiring market. So Max and Esteban, come on up.
Wow, what an event. Hey, everyone. I want to thank again everyone for coming out. This is really exciting. It's one of our first Tech in Motion in-person events for in about 3 years. Like Hannah mentioned, I'm Max. I'm our executive director at Motion Recruitment. We're really excited to be hosting this here in Chicago. I want to first off thank 1871 for hosting this event. It's an incredible space. Thank you for everything. Amazing marketing team for putting this all together. Our moderator and panelists, thank you for taking the time. All of our volunteers, and of course, all of you guys for coming on out. And lastly, ChatGPT for writing this speech. Thank you, guys. Thank you. For those that don't know Motion Recruitment, we're one of the largest IT staffing organizations, focusing on both full-time and contract placements. We're with offices around the US and Canada. We are also the founder of Tech in Motion, and it's been about 10 years. We started it in our office with pizza and beer and just like-minded individuals. And, here tonight with 200, 300 people, a lot of people online too. And it's just really cool to be here. So we specialize in mid to senior level tech positions and working with some of the top companies in the country. Motion provides both job seekers and hiring managers the opportunity to work with tech recruiters that truly live and breathe technology. And it's the reason we put this all together. So if you're looking for your next job or looking to hire at all, please reach out and we'll be around, all right?
Yeah, so if you guys, like Max mentioned, my name is Esteban. If you guys are looking for that next job in your tech career or a hiring manager that's struggling to hire IT professionals or just curious about the IT tech landscape, feel free to approach us. We'll be mingling afterwards. We do have our career booth to my left with some of our top recruiters, so they can also help you. We'll be raffling off some prizes. But yeah, feel free to reach out from there.
That being said, let's talk about the reason we're all here. A technology that, according to some, could fundamentally change how the world works, artificial intelligence.
As the data manager, or the manager of the data practice at Motion Recruitment, I have noticed no matter what part of the tech industry you're in, time and money is being invested in AI tools and programs to improve productivity and streamline work processes. The global AI market was sized at over $6 billion at the end of 2022, and that number inside the software development space, AI and machine learning tools are already pretty common. As Steve Harvey says, survey says 92% of developers are already using AI-powered coding tools in their daily work. Another survey showed that 87% of developers who are using these AI tools are happy with the results from using generative AI tools and are able to satisfying, meaningful work, compared to only 50% of developers who don't use these generative AI tools.
However, and the reason we're all here, we want to know, what does the future hold for software developers in this new normal with the revolutionary tools? Is the skill set to become a successful developer just about to drastically change, or will these new AI concepts only bring a slight shift in the workforce? So are we ready to get this started? Awesome. Well, I'll hand things over to our moderator, the head of evangelism at Databricks, Ari Kaplan. Ari, you want to take it away?
And everyone, you can come on up. Okay. Thank you. All right, and we have a stellar group of panelists coming on. They'll be introducing themselves in a minute, but this is a great turnout. I appreciate everybody here, and I know people are online as well. Welcome to you all. So I am Ari Kaplan. I'm probably most known here in Chicago for having created and led the Chicago Cubs analytics department, as well as being a major league scout for them, both under the Andy McPhail, Jim Hendry, Theo Epstein eras. So many adventures there, both using really what was the first of data science, data-driven decision-making throughout the organization, but also looking at players from a humanistic standpoint. So this will be part of the theme of us, is where do they augment each other, the evaluation of digital and real life. So right now, I'm the head of evangelism for Databricks. If you haven't heard of us, we're creative of this new format called the Lake House. It's not so new. Pretty exciting. You can look into it later, but I'm super excited today since we announced our Series I fundraising, $500 million just this morning, which now makes us the third largest private company in America and the 8th in the world. So super excited for that, and we're focused, thank you. A great team of people to help make that happen. So anywhere I could share the experiences there, I would probably rewinding into it. I was with a company called Data Robot, which was pretty fascinating. It was one of the start of auto machine learning, where it's like code generation. One of the things that we'll be hitting heavy on. It's going to be changing, if you're a software developer, that whole paradigm. So that's the topic. Everyone has such a diverse background on this panel. So don't want to talk too long. I want to have you hear other people speak about it. But the ability to auto-generate machine learning, having been a data scientist hands-on myself, if you haven't been in that position, it could just like roll over you as just something someone's saying. But it's like magic. You can write really advanced code. You could get a PhD in data science and spend 6 months writing some complex, or you could do auto machine learning, at least at this point, to do like beginner, maybe intermediate level complexity. So that was fantastic. The one thing I should also mention, thank the sponsors, Motion Recruitment. When Hannah asked me to come on board, she had no idea, but I was one of the success stories where I got placed at a job that lasted a couple of years, like in a leadership position, had a wonderful experience. You had no idea when you asked me, so I'm proud to give that as an example. And my personal recommendation, they brought me in, got to know me, and it was just a great position. So I want to give my stamp of approval. So let's see if I'm missing anything major. Just like the whole job industry is rapidly changing. I looked online today and saw like the hottest job growth in the world now is, for better or worse, right or wrong, is artificial intelligence, machine learning, whatever that means. The worst was being a bank teller, go figure. But with that, why don't we all have a seat, and then we'll start with the questions. Again, there'll be time for like 20 minutes, I think, for Q&A. I think we'll get some good questions. If not, I have like pre-planned questions too. So why don't we have a seat, and we'll just start maybe this way and going to the right. Just introduce yourself, and then like the fun thing is like what is generative AI to you, and what are some good use cases that you're seeing?
Thank you so much, Ari. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Fouad Boustouane, and I am the Director of Machine Learning, Vision AI, and Innovation at the Grainger. For those who don't know, Grainger, we are the biggest distributor of industrial part in the US. Going back to your question regarding what is generative AI, quite frankly, we can write books about this question. But I will try to simplify what is generative AI. In a nutshell, generative AI is a class of AI and machine learning algorithms and models that are capable to generate content that is as good as human experts, or sometimes even much better. If we think of generative AI as a black box system, this black box takes an input and generate output. If the black box takes an input, a prompt, a text, and generate a text as an output, the text can be a question, can be a task related to language, then this is a language model. And nowadays, these models are growing and becoming big and big in terms of parameters. That's why we call them large language models. And these models are trained on massive amount of data and in a self-supervised way, and they are capable to generalize on different tasks of language. It could be classification, it could be sentiment analysis, it could be topic discovery, name it entity recognition. There are plenty of applications. Going back to this black box, if we feed the prompt a text and the output is an image, then this is image generation model. Example of generative AI that is capable to map keywords to visual content is Stable Diffusion. And there is another category as well, which is a multi-model models. These models are capable of taking beyond text and images and the combination of both and generate either text and image. There are tremendous applications of generative AI across domains. For example, in the medical field and healthcare, generative AI, believe it or not, it will accelerate our journey in drugs and medicine discovery through what we call molecule generation. Generative AI will help doctors to summarize notes, to enrich these notes as well, and customize reports for patient. In the manufacturing space, generative AI will help to automate and optimize day-to-day manufacturing operations and processes. And for example, in education sector, generative AI, especially the virtual assistant, will help learners to customize the content and curriculum for them to learn better and create a customized, tailored content. Another exciting application, which is in art and design, generative AI today is capable of taking it beyond text and generate piece of arts, or it's capable to generate architecture and design that we can use for marketing purposes, as well as for other application within the space of e-commerce or other applications. I can keep going on and on for an hour. There are plenty of applications, and we are really excited about this journey within the generative AI.
I can go next. So I'm Helen Sun. Can you hear me? No. Can we turn the mic on? Or is it me? I have to do it. Hello? No? Okay. Technology, right? So, so I'm Helen Sun. I work for Meta, and not a best representation, can't operate a mic, right? So, and I've been with Meta for a little over 3 years now. The first 2 years, I was working mostly on the AI infrastructure. So basically building tools, platforms, and services to power thousands of machine learning engineers and research scientists at Meta to do their job more efficiently and with greater ease. So those are the type of solutions that's end-to-end of a machine learning model journey, including AI data, feature engineering, distributed training, because the models are so big now, and also unified serving with whatever surface and channel we need to deploy those models on. So it was a fantastic journey. It was very tough because all the use cases we have to support across different families of apps, ads, metaverse, AI research, for example. And you have to scale at day one when you build those solutions, when you work at Meta, right? So it was very interesting work. About a year ago, and then when the company was facing a little bit of a headwind, I decided to move into the monetization space. So now I support the ranking, machine learning, AI functions in business messaging. So those are the areas where the 3 messaging apps that Meta has, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and Instagram Direct, where the advertisers use those channels to connect with their users and customers and prospects. So we use AI and machine learning to power the best, most efficient way of those connections and then tools. So that's what I do at Meta. And before Meta, I was Chief Technology Officer at a couple of companies here in Chicago, one of which was a sports AI data company, and the other one is a pretty familiar household name, JP Morgan Chase, commercial banking. And prior to that, I held a number of executive positions at Motorola Solutions, Salesforce, and Oracle. Long story. But Chicago feels home. I'm so excited to be part of this panel, awesome panel here, to talk about AI and advancement in generative AI. So it's very exciting. Use cases that excites me. I think we can go on for all night about use cases, but I'll start with Meta, what we're doing. So we have released Llama. Llama stands for Large Language Model, Meta AI. We're very creative in naming, as you can tell. We open sourced it, and Stanford built their model on top of Llama, and they called it Alpaca. They're far more creative in naming, right? So made a lot of headlines in that model. I can talk a lot more about what they did with the Llama. And then recently, we released Llama 2 that was trained on 2 trillion tokens with 70 billion parameters. That's the size of the language model we're talking about, right? And then most recently, just 2 weeks ago, we released Code Llama, and that's trained on top of Llama 2 on source code that will help instruct you how to write Python code, Java, C++. You ask it a question, it will spit out code. And it's open sourced again. You can download it, you can play with it, and there are a number of resources out there you can use, like Colab. You can just download a notebook and run it in the free tier. Even with the free tier, you can use GPU to run it, and it's a lot faster. It can give you the answer. And once you go to like Hugging Face, download some of the models there. They are quantized, a lot smaller, a lot compact. You will be able to run it on your local machine, even Intel, let alone some M1 and M2 chips, that MacBook if you have those. So a lot of fun, a lot of things that's happening at Meta. But how are we using those large language models within Meta, right? One thing we do, Meta does ads, right? So we're using large language models and generative AI to help generate the content for ads. So it democratize the access to ad tech with those small, medium-sized businesses who don't otherwise have access to large ad tech companies to help them with the creatives. So that's one thing we're doing. In business messaging, we are also working on some chatbots. Think about those small advertisers when they create an ad, they get inundated with tons of inquiries. The ads works, I can guarantee you. So they get a lot of inquiries coming in through creating those ads, and all of a sudden they have to stop that campaign because they couldn't manage the volume of those messages coming in. So we have developed a lot of tools like suggest as you type, suggested reply, so using AI models, natural language processing to power those type of interactions and efficiency. And then with chatbot, think about it, you don't even need a human to invoke those services. They can have conversations with the potential customers, the prospects, and they can even close the deal by recommending the right product at the right time. So that's on the chatbot side, what we're doing with large language models. And we have something called MetaMate within Meta that I can actually go online and ask a question. And where can I find this table or this data? It will give me a list of tables that are most often used and where to find that information, what are the privacy policies associated with the data, with the metadata. It'll generate code because it's trained using Llama 2 on top of all of the internal documents, a wiki, notes, posts, codebase, everything you name it. So it just becomes so more productive. It's really helpful for engineers, for leaders to ask questions. Outside of Meta, I think one thing that really excites me about generative AI is music. Who knows the last album that Beatles had produced? Last song, anybody know? Has to be a long time ago, right? Wrong. They are producing their last album as we speak. They're going to release it this year. Future tense. They are using AI to generate voice for John Lennon. And Paul McCartney, when he was interviewed at BBC, he said, this is really scary, right? But it's also exciting. It's exciting because it's the future. Now, speaking about future, we talked a little bit about Alpaca, right, Stanford. Anybody heard of generative agents? So Stanford and Google had done a demo. They call it Smallville. So they created about 25 agents and live in that simulated world. The demo has been taken down, but the time when it was running, I was watching it. They will be getting up, brushing teeth, and going to school and talking about the mayor election within Smallville. Super interesting. They have a school, they have a library, they do their things on a daily basis. And then those researchers will give them seeding sort of instructions. And one of the instruction was, hey, Valentine's Day is coming, you guys should do something about it. And the other instruction was to a female agent and say, hey, Becky, you are hot for Ben. I'm making up those names, but you can look up the paper. The story is real. So over the next 2 days, you can see those agents interacting with each other, conversing with each other. Lo and behold, they held a party for Valentine's Day. And on that party, Becky asked Ben out. Exciting time we live in, right?
All right. Well, very nice to be here. Thank you again, Hannah and 1871 for hosting this. My name is Safani. I lead solution engineering for C3 AI. I'm based here in Chicago. Our company is based in Redwood City. We're a global company that is focused on enabling enterprises and building AI applications for them, built on our platform. My background, I also, like you, Ari, have some history with motion recruitment or Jumpstart at the time, and that's how I actually got connected with C3. So I much appreciate the connection here and you guys inviting me to participate here. I now lead a team of solution engineers. Our role is working with our customers in building, designing, and deploying AI applications. These AI applications span many different industries, and we work with many very interesting use cases, and I'm more than happy to go into them. I know I'll try to keep this brief. So in terms of Gen AI, it's certainly a very hot topic for us. We are seeing a lot of interest in the enterprise space with Gen AI. We're internally, looking at very interesting use cases. I'll say from a personal perspective, use cases that excite me and are just fun, similar in terms of music, asking ChatGPT to write lyrics to a song, or asking ChatGPT to write me a poem. It's just cool to see the creativity and just the ability, the capabilities. On the enterprise space, we're doing some really interesting stuff. Certainly in C3, the concerns that a lot of the enterprises are seeing around data leakage and hallucination and things like that. So we're really trying to solve for that, but also give access to a vast information library, knowledge source that the enterprises have collected and built over many, many decades, and being able to just improve, and a lot of this I think is around productivity and just faster access to information. So being able to ask a very simple question in natural language and get a response that previously would require going to some sort of subject matter expert to dig out some sort of documentation from something that they've it's some knowledge that they've built over many decades of work, and being able to access that today now within a matter of seconds. So that's those types of work, the type of work that we're doing, and I'll hand it off to you, to Terry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Terry Litzky. I am the former Chief Technology Officer at PepsiCo. I also spent about 15 years at Accenture. I also operated as a supply chain leader for Hitachi, as well as the chief digital officer for Tate & Lyle. My experience with AI has been very interesting, and as we all know here, and I'm sure many of you out in the audience know, that without big data, without having good data, without having good technical ecosystems, generative AI is kind of garbage in, garbage out. So what I would be really interested in is having this open discussion into how we can kind of develop use cases that not only increase productivity, but also, in my case, increase profitability for the kinds of businesses that I've been working in for over 30 years. My perspective today will probably be more from a manufacturing perspective. I spent most of my career in supply chain operations, and so my entree into big data as well as generative AI has really been more on the business side. So I'll actually be very interested in other questions that y'all may have, and I'll be happy to share my own experiences and those use cases and how I've deployed it and how I've seen it evolve over the decades. Thank you so much for having me, and I can't tell you all how much I appreciate such a great turnout.
Yeah, super. I love the panelists here. It's an incredible variety. And yeah, people wanted me to throw out a couple of my favorite use cases, but just like philosophically, just want to emphasize there's this whole new, like we mentioned big data, this is now a modern data stack where when I worked with Oracle, you're talking of the order of magnitude of billions of records, and now you're talking hundreds of billions or trillions of records that could be processed like sub-second. And so the things that weren't possible, the advancements of NVIDIA and GPUs, so everything's super advancing.
I mean, and just the fact that we're going from, I don't know if any of y'all remembered, just encryption in itself, 128-bit encryption it's old news. My nephew can decrypt that now, right? Right? And back in the day when I didn't have so much gray hair, I really noticed that, yeah, that was the thing. I think that big data has changed a lot. I also think how we develop insights really has changed. So, if we're talking about exciting use cases, everything from predictive analytics to building insights to creativity and creating original content to exploring everything from the relevance of blockchain or augmented realities. I think that is really, really changing. My perspective has really been more around Industry 4.0. It's not just digitization of supply chain operations, but it's also the business enablement in other ways that we couldn't really do before. I mean, let's face it, before 2020, who was really online having virtual meetings every day, right?
Yeah, Industry 4.0 is awesome. Every single industry has been and will continue to be transformed through AI. And let's remind ourselves, generative AI is incredible, and that's like the hot thing. And that is a subset of the use cases. The traditional is predictive analytics and classification analytics, and combined it's called multimodal.
Correct.
Structured, unstructured data together is now possible.
Well, and now we have the types of and the volume and the veracity of data where we can build heuristic data sets. So yes, generative AI is possible, right? The Beatles can release that record because there are decades of John Lennon singing and producing music.
All about the data that goes into the model.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so a lot of people are here. The title of this thing is future. Part of it is the future of software development. So I'm curious. I want to hear everyone's thoughts on how is this all changing the role of the software development process?
I believe generative AI, we are witnessing a paradigm shift. It's like the internet back in the 90s. And it's the same thing within the life cycle development of softwares. Like today, generative AI is capable of generating codes, writing very complex pieces of codes and blocks of codes to solve very complex problems. I think it's exciting, but it's at the same time, it's kind of scary for engineers. It's exciting because it will accelerate the journey to develop highly scalable production-grade code and bring solution to the market quickly. But in the meantime, maybe some engineers are concerned about what I'm going to do next. If generative AI is going to take over our jobs, what will be the future look like?
I want it to take over some of those plants. I've worked in manufacturing for decades and decades. I want generative AI to take over some of the repetitive tasks that are in plants so that we can train and upskill our entire workforce to do other things. I want to elevate human beings. I don't see generative AI taking jobs away. I'm having them do the jobs that I don't want to do.
Plus 100. I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, because even within the life cycle development of software, there are multiple repetitive tasks, like writing stories, writing the same block of code, testing the code, and vice versa. And I believe generative AI is not going to put engineers off jobs. It's going to repurpose the way we are doing our job.
Totally.
For example, instead of the engineer going and doing repetitive work, we can give that repetitive work and writing like pieces of codes to generative AI. Then the engineer would be more efficient, more productive in accomplishing the task and building like production scale code. But where I see the future is moving toward is more or less toward more testing, because generative AI is going to build pieces of codes with that there are some threats and potential vulnerability of the systems built by generative AI. We need more testing engineers.
Well, and if anything, we're going to have to build up more skill sets. So of the engineers that are out there, I'm really looking to all of y'all really elevating your game. I mean, it's time to level up, okay? Because I think, if anything, generative AI is really just going to help build a foundation so that we can kind of come in and edit it. Now, fortunately, unfortunately, I really miss those hands-on days because, quite frankly, and I'm gonna use the words that you and I spoke about earlier. You actually said, "I hate management." Okay, I hear you. But the fact of the matter is that people like me want to get back hands-on. But the only way we can really do that is if we can automate some of our platforms such that we can focus on cooler things, right? And innovation.
Yeah, I think Max mentioned how there's actually an increase in openings and jobs in this space. So we're certainly not seeing a slowdown. It's more just shifting that focus, right? It's about optimizing. We're seeing it impacting all phases of the software development lifecycle. So everything from designing, testing, writing code, but you still need the human context. You need to be able to there's a lot of contextual information, constraints that are hard to just feed into in a prompt and just have it solved by a generative AI model.
You nailed it right there, context and relevance, right? So I'll give y'all one example that I'm dealing with right now. So I have a really terrific data architect. She is really frustrated right now because she's working with a DevOps team, and the DevOps team, look, they're trying to build out applications for the business. We're doing business enablement. Manufacturing is not in the business. The companies I work with, they're not in the business for technology, right? These are manufacturers of devices, beverages, ingredients. So these business use cases are just that. They're not tech use cases. So we have a DevOps team that's trying to do business enablement and deliver those applications. But at the same time, we have data engineers and the data architects saying, hey, this is the best practice, right? We want to use generative AI to generate this code, but then I've got these data architects going, yes, but that's not best practice. We're missing a lot of things. So if anything, to your point, we're creating a lot more jobs because context is out. I mean, if we relied only on generative AI, we're going to be building up a lot of tech debt that management people like myself really hate. We really hate that.
Totally. This conversation is so exciting. I think we are putting Ari out of the job because we're also generative HI, human intelligence. Anyways, I think what Terry said earlier about the data architect kind of remind me of a story. You might be thinking, how do I write the change? How do I not let that change happen to me? What type of new skills do we need in order to be successful in this new economy? So Terry's mention about that data architect kind of just reminded me of a story of where I hired a data architect at a company 20 years ago. You might wonder, why are you talking about a use case 20 years ago? We're talking about generative AI. You were talking about Oracle and business objects at the time when I was hiring that architect, right? So it reminded me, because I was asking him, I was not looking for like specific skills. Have you used business objects, or how fast you can write your queries, or I actually asked him a question. I brought my business card. It was just that long time ago. I brought my business card and I told him, I said, take a look at the business card. Can you design a data model based on the information on the card? And you can just see so much behavior coming out of the reaction, right? A lot of people got really put off, but then some of them, when they start to think about the problem, they get really, really into it. You can see that they're excited about that. They're asking questions, they're curious. But some of them will be like, oh no, I'm done. As soon as you say, okay, let's move on to the next. So you can see a lot of behavioral aspect of people. And the one I hired was someone, looked at it, was initially put off. It was a bit nervous because never thought about something like that, right, during an interview. But he thought for a while and he said, what am I designing it for? What purpose is this database for? And he got hired, and it was a great hire. So the morale of this story is, we talk about skills, what do we need to learn? It's really the core competencies that do not change, and that will prepare your career to the next level. So those are problem solving, collaboration, working with people, resolve conflicts very effectively, and have the ability to actually debug and navigate through ambiguity. So those are the things I think won't change, no matter what the technology changes and how fast it changes. But in reality, on the other side of the equation, outside of the competencies, there are also skills, right? So there are skills that you need to look at. Some of them are the most foundational skills, and some of them are more transient, right, skills that you need to have. Both are important. I think the foundational skills change less frequently, whereas the transient skills change a lot frequent, right? And I used to use that example. I said, today's technology has the lifespan of a banana peel. And that's true because new features come out all the time and you have to keep learning. But those are the skills that will get you in the door. I'm not saying they're not important. They are important because a lot of companies, they look for productivity right away. So you need to have those skills. You need to do it well. But the foundational skills are also shifting in today's economy with AI and generative AI. I think used to be in computer science, what you need to have is parallel programming, algorithms, right? You need to have object-oriented programming, functional programming, SQL, all of those skills. And computer engineering, you need to know foundations of networking, right? Storage and all of those background. In AI, some of the foundational skills you need to have, math, right? A linear regression, statistics, and calculus. Those are really important foundational skills to have. So to summarize, I think just think about it. You need those transient skills to get in the door. You need the foundational skills to continue to grow in that area that you've chosen, but it's the core competency that will prepare you in your success in your career.
I was going to say, let me add to that. One other thing I also look for in leaders is, and not just being the smartest person in the room, I think that's super important, but it's how you use those skills. So for those of you who are just starting off in your careers, don't worry about it. Seriously. It's more important to explore it and build your experiences and show leadership. Leadership isn't just, am I managing people? No, a lot of it is how well do I manage my own time? How well do I manage projects and tasks? How productive can I be? And what I mean by productive is how well can I collaborate with others and manage tasks such that I can leverage those foundational skills in a more efficient way. Pro tip. If you really want to build up your career set, not just having what I call the foundational skill set as an engineer, learn how to manage a project. Learn what it is to manage a budget. not only is it going to help you navigate your organization, whether it's a tech company, a manufacturing company, or a science lab, having some of those other, what I call softer touch, these are the types of skill sets that, frankly, no amount of generative AI is going to help us have. However, it helps us enable it. So build up your skill, your organizational skills. Having soft skills is going to be really important as well. You may have the resume to get the interview, but you still have to be able to exactly deliver and communicate in such a way that others can understand you.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Just to add to what Terry and Helen were saying, is there are some components of the life cycle development of a software solution that is not replaceable. For example, aligning with the business partners on key deliverables, requirements, and there are some level of human intelligence that needs to be there, part of the process, to accomplish and deliver and just align and present the work to stakeholders and business partners.
Absolutely.
We don't see any technology replacing that. Technology can build the black box, but you need somebody to understand it, to explain it.
It's a complementary relationship.
And we get to explainability of AI, which is another complexity and another dimension. And that's why I strongly believe engineers are not replaceable. Generative AI will make the day-to-day work of an engineer more fun, assisted by AI to generate code, and the engineer will focus more on creativity.
Yeah, and there's
it's a tool in your tool
Absolutely.
chest.
Absolutely.
It's not going to come after your job. It's going to be another tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just to augment the 3 or 4 areas, so you have developers, you have people who are good with mathematics and probability and statistics, you have people who understand the business. Yeah. So for example, if you ask PepsiCo saying stop selling in Walmart, and you go, wait a minute, we have a 5-year contract with Walmart, the business doesn't allow it. You need people who understand the business. And then there's a newer realm being carved out called ML Ops, the operationalization of machine learning. How do you put in place, how do you understand when the data drifts? Is the data drifting affecting my models or not affecting the models? How do you govern it? How do you have transparency to understand what is where's the raw data? Who has access? What's the version of data? Something called time travel. So what does the data look like real-time streaming a month ago?
And you can use generative AI to analyze all that, but you're still going to need control room. You're still going to need master data governance. You're still going to need data engineers. You're still going to need hands-on humans to contextualize and build relevance. And no decision tree, seriously, no decision tree, no matter how heuristic, no matter how well, how good the data is, you're still going to need good engineers to be able to contextualize that.
Yeah, and the whole level up story that you all were talking about. One example, when I started out with the Cubs, it was kind of like a one-person shop. It would take months to get data, clean data, and Theo would say, should we make a trade, get Anthony Rizzo? He's some kid in the minor leagues, AA. Should we give up Andrew Kashner for him? Things like that. It would take me many days to write these linear regressions you're talking about, or forecasting.
Say their job.
Yeah, gradient boosted trees, Vopel Wabbit, all of those different models, but automating 80-90% of that enabled me and us to be able to ask that question not once every 3 days, but every couple of hours if we wanted to.
Or on demand.
On demand, real time. Or democratization is the next phrase, enabling the general manager or the president to ask your own question, or whatever your industry is, to enable. So I did this research myself in my last company, looked at LinkedIn, did some screen scraping of LinkedIn data. For everyone who had data science type title, there were 30 people who had business analyst type titles, and 7,500 who had Excel in their profile. So if you could get, let's just say, the 30 times as many people to do Gen AI or predictive analytics, that's 30 times the value. And you still need people who know the mathematical probabilities to say R squared or log loss is so much, it's a good enough model that we should use or not. Or in today's LLM, is it hallucinating or not? So that's that whole collaboration.
Yeah. Even though we are shifting from understanding like calculus and mathematics to what we call foundation models. Today, there are a lot of foundation models that are trained more generic, like LLMs. You just need to know and to learn how to effectively prompt engineer these models, how to write the right question to get the right outcome. And I think this is going to be one of the skill set you should add on your resume down the road. I am a prompt engineer. I know how to engineer AI to get me the best outcome of it. Could be writing a code, could be generating a content for marketing, or it could be writing like marketing campaign. Like prompt engineering, it is going to be a huge plus for engineers, and it's today to start the journey to understand how to interact with this generative AI, and what are some like techniques to prompt engineers, and what are some heuristics that are like zero shot, few shot, one shot prompting, or also like model grounding, how to avoid hallucination. We will be down the road, we'll be focusing more on, you know what, we have a generic model, how to design my problem for the model to understand it, rather than how to design the right model to solve the problem. It's a paradigm shift, and we have been witnessing these days, like these models are going to be, like Llama, for example, it is a generic model. You can leverage it, can solve multiple tasks and problems related to language. And it's all about like how to prompt it, how to design the right prompt to get the best outcome of it.
Totally, and I think what happens is that those one model that's done right really empowers over thousands of people. When we say analyst, I think Excel is the most underrated tool. It's super important and it's super useful, but if we can uplift those tools like Excel to prompt engineering, I think the power of analysts can be just analysts.
So in manufacturing, I'm also seeing some really interesting applications for generative AI, specifically around edge computing, excuse me, and IoT. So raise your hands if you've ever used an IoT device. The rest of you are liars because you have an IoT device in your pocket called your cell phone. Excuse me. And one thing I will say about edge computing in particular, in manufacturing, pure cloud will never come around. For the reason why is because most manufacturing is out in remote places. So we do need edge computing, but that also is compelling because we are going to have to level up around generative AI to meet the needs that where in the situations where pure cloud does not apply, right? So if you think about edge computing and reducing latency around network and being able to do heavy compute like generative AI, it's really important to understand that, you know, there are going to be some really conservative adopters. And I'm going to be looking at you, my friend, to get that back up, because out in the boonies where we are producing ingredients out in rural America, you know, we're not going to have access to some of these tools. So, you know, I'm really looking to people like y'all to be able to help these industries like manufacturing and food and ingredients, where we don't necessarily have access to these kinds of tools, to bring it forefront so that it becomes accessible. So if there are any skill sets that I'm really going to be lobbying for heavily after this panel, is y'all get those skills out so that we can use them out in the plants and out in supply chain operations. You know, we're the ones making your food, but we also rely on your tools and your technology to make it happen in a more efficient way.
It's a great point, I think, in terms of just specializations beyond just, I mean, you mentioned a lot of the skill sets and understanding data science, machine learning, but there are a lot of enablers, a lot of what my team does. We work very closely with our data scientists, work very closely with our architects, with our data engineers, but it's a big team effort to bring these applications to life. So there's a lot of specialization around understanding some of the constraints, infrastructure, cost constraints, and being able to bring, you know, these types of very novel applications to life to make this happen.
I don't know if it's so novel though, because if you think about it, if some of these earlier, you know, a lot of food and ingredients companies, agribusiness in general, tends to be late adopters. And because we're late adopters, we kind of wait until that third or fourth generation. Like, you know, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like dealing with my boomer mom.
You know, she wait. I didn't give her an iPhone until like 10 because I don't know if I could really trust her with that device. And I kind of feel it's the same way with generative AI. I think we really need to mature the technology such that late adopters can really leverage it as a viable tool in some of these business use cases. I'm actually very interested in hearing you all kind of talk through like how you're building out some of these so that other industries that aren't tech companies can kind of leverage that. I mean, what exactly Grainger? I was going to say we're manufacturing companies. We come from manufacturing. I mean, how are you guys doing? I know you have this fantastic lab.
Yeah, pretty much we are working on embedding AI, generative AI, machine learning within each and every business processes. And we strongly believe it's a journey we have to start today before tomorrow. Because the amounts of training and learnings and test and fail and learn cycle will help us a lot to make our AI and processes better. There are plenty of use cases from, for example, enhancing our search engine, leveraging generative AI. How can we understand, for example, what the customer is searching for? And how can we map the customer to the right product? How can we augment our, for example, database or product description to all the way to how to automate some of our processes that as part of our like supply chain and manufacturing units. We are experimenting with lots of generative AIs, and we are building some of the competitive advantaged capabilities. You can learn more about like what you are building. Like there are like a bunch of patents we have filed in the past couple of years, and that could be a good starting point to learn how are we contextualizing AI. It's very important to contextualize AI and embed it within a business process. Otherwise, what you are building is going to end up nowhere in production, and it's not going to be like customer faced, and you are not going to monetize it. It's very important to be innovative, AI, business-centric engineer.
And that's knowing what
and
those use
leader.
cases are, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
and I encourage you all to not just look at technical use cases because I think we've done a good job of talking about that. I think one of the biggest challenges is being able to tie in what are those business use cases, right? How are we? If you're talking about monetization, let's think creatively. That's something I think that generative AI isn't quite there yet. That's where humans are still needed to really kind of be creative and going, all right, I've built out this technical use case. Now, how can I leverage that into a real world business application? And more importantly, maybe a manufacturing company could really leverage that. How would we help them level up, right? And then are you paying attention? And I say you as in the humans, and this is where we really need to, I would really love to see generative AI become a little more mature, is really understanding the marketplace. You know, I talk to software company and vendors all the time who tell me, oh, we can do generative AI for you this way and that way. And I'm thinking, look, if you can help me just master my data first, then we can talk about generative AI, right? And to your point about foundations, without good master data governance, without good master data management, without having a good data infrastructure, all of those things are going to be lacking. So if there are any skill sets that I would love to see more of, I'd like to see more and more mature data scientists, data engineers, and more importantly, those who really know how to master and govern data with a business context. To me, those are skill sets that are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, that was going to be, I don't know what our timing is, but that was going to be the key question is what skill sets should we all be having? I know people are in college, people who are just starting out 4 years from now, like hard skills or soft skills. What do we need?
It is going to be a mix. I think today, it's not a choice to transition to AI. It is a necessity. Everyone should transition to AI with a different level of degree of complexity. Engineers, they have to master how to interact with AI, how to master prompt engineering, how to get the best outcome of it. They need to understand and learn and level set on like what are the foundation, what's the basics, how to train a model, how to fine-tune a model. It doesn't have to be all the way to architecting a solution or a model. It just like leverage out of the box like Llama, and how can I fine tune it? How can I domain adapt it to my application? These are, like I said, this is a necessity. Prompt engineering, like literally like memorize this. This is gonna be the future. How to make AI work better for a given use case. How to provide AI with the right context to maximize the output, or to help AI to write better code. Beside that, for everybody else, even for like non-engineers, like everybody will be using AI to edit their emails. Who doesn't use it? Like pretty much nobody, everybody does. No, like you have to understand even how to question AI, how to feed your draft email or draft document or content to make it better. I think it's time to learn how to interact with AI, how to maximize the output of AI. And for engineers, I highly recommend to start to build strong foundation around how to train a model, how to approach a problem. Because in machine learning space, you need to understand for a given problem, what is the right model to choose? What is the right task to train the model on? Shall I fine tune or pre-train? And going back to large language models, one of the biggest drawbacks is it's really expensive to train these models. These models are very, very large. Nowadays, we are talking about, she mentioned 80 billions. We are talking about trillion scale model. Like in the case of GPT-4, it's like tremendous. Just like deploying these models in production requires dedicated resources and compute power. We are talking about like hundreds of GPUs, if not thousands of GPUs, and they're not even available on the cloud. That's another, it's so expensive.
The good news, though, is once those foundation models are built, like Apaka I was talking about earlier with Stanford, they actually hired some human annotators to come up with 175 questions, so very well curated questions, and use OpenAI to generate about 70,000 prompts, and then feed that into their model, and then that's how they train Alpaca. So, I mean, the foundations are there. It's really for us to really leverage and use it to the extent
but
they could be.
The sad part is the data will be biased toward ChatGPT. And that's another level of complexity. Like, we have to be careful when we interact with... that's the reality, and these are like facts. Like, that's why I really stress on prompt engineer, because these models tend to hallucinate. These models tend to be unstable, tends to generate like wrong data, wrong facts. We have to make sure what we feed to the model, it's pretty much helping the model to give you the most accurate data points as output. But like that's why I highlighted like testing. We need lots of testing. Even if we like jump on the bar and like put in these large models, we have the right skill set, quantize the models, do all the cool operation engineering stuff. Now, we have a model in production. Shall we expose it to customers? That's a big problem. You have legal involved. You have like manual curated data. You have to test it out. We don't, because these models are biased and unfair, and it's all correlated to the data like these models are trained on. You can't control that.
You got to know the limit, right?
Absolutely.
You got to be able to understand when they hallucinate, because those models that are trained to do what? They are trained to predict what the highest probability next word is. Yes. So when you ask them the question, instead of saying, I don't know, they'll come up with something that's the closest to it, right? So you gotta know how it works. You gotta know the limit, and you need to be able to come up with architecture and governance so that you can use them to the extent that they can be powerful, but you can protect your customers, yourself from wrong answers.
Cool. So at this point, and if you want to do like any 1 minute answer, but I wanted to open it up for Q&A. And since we have people online, we have some folks that will run around with the microphone, and hopefully there'll be questions. If not, we have plenty more to talk about. But if anyone wants to raise their hand, we'll get a microphone out. But as we do that, any like 30-second final for that last question? Didn't want to cut anyone off.
No, I think we are good.
Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed that the word security and security with LLM, that wasn't kind of talked about. OWASP, which is an open source security framework organization, released 1.1 of their top 10 security concerns for LLM applications. Some of these are insecure output handling, sensitive information disclosure, and training data poisoning. I'm personally in the cybersecurity field for a healthcare company. Security, legal concerns include HIPAA and laws like that. So I just wanted to know your thoughts or insight regarding the topic of security in LLM applications.
That's a really great question. One thing I have seen around security, specifically with dealing with legal, is two things. One is misinformation, and then two, being able to really manage DLP, right? You know what DLP is, right? Everyone knows what DLP is? Data loss prevention? Okay. So if there are really two things that I would really care about, and again, in my former roles, I cared a lot about security, and DLP was arguably one of the biggest. One, because you want to protect data coming in to reduce misinformation, and then you want to also control how data goes out so you can protect your IP, right? And more importantly, you want to protect the IP such that it's not corrupted and misused, et cetera. And right? We can think of all the dangerous scenarios. So I guess the answer to your question around using generative AI is being able to distinguish the difference between the information that has veracity and misinformation. And I'm going to use the word misinformation really broadly, right? Because it could be corrupted data, right? It could be manipulated data, et cetera. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay.
Just to add, to Terry's thoughts, generative AI, because of the quality of generated text, it can lead to really good content for social engineering, to fish into. We have to be really careful about the way we are using it, or we have to reverse engineer to some extent from security standpoint to understand if this content generated by generative AI or it's a human being. And we have to put in place some protocols to screen for potential vulnerability and attack. And there is another layer, maybe not everybody is aware of. These generative AI models are equipped with continual learning cycle. Wherever you fit this model will use the data and fine-tune itself and learn from the data you feed. And guess what? When you ask AI to write codes for security purposes, AI will learn your vulnerability and can expose it to somebody else. You have to be really careful when we upload our codes, ask generative AI to correct our codes, and make sure don't upload any keys or private keys or any personal information or any sensitive data, because generative AI, and especially third-party companies where you don't have control on, they are equipped with incremental learning, and they are really good at leverage your data to get, it's a cycle to make themselves better over time.
And security is insanely high level of challenge for businesses, but all of humanity, from my opinion. But which is why one of the trends is for, at least in the business side, companies wanting to bring generative AI and traditional AI in-house, so it's on their own data set, not just for security, which is crucial, but also it's the lingo, the linguistics of your business. We're talking Industry 4.0. The terminology of healthcare is very different than baseball. A can of corn, what is that? For another industry, it doesn't matter. So the context, but to have your own proprietary, hopefully built on open source software, but the model itself is your own control and transparency, and you understand how it all works is going to be crucial.
To echo and add to Fuad's input in terms of, I think many of you have heard of Samsung's breach. I think some engineers were just feeding some code, looking for generative AI to help them optimize some code. But in the process, as you say, these models are retraining and taking this input, and they are exposing some trade secrets, some IP, some really critical IP. So you need to be very careful. A lot of the enterprise, a lot of our customers are very, that's top. That's the top concern for them. around data leakage and potentially exposing some very important or sensitive information.
Rules are key. Having rules and governance will be key, for sure, yeah.
I mean, I saw one of our customers, I was on site, and they basically pushed wallpapers onto everyone's desktop saying, do not use ChatGPT. Like, ChatGPT is very cool, but do not use it.
There's a great South Park episode on ChatGPT, humorously worth watching. And I see we have another question there.
Hey, everybody, this has been great. Was going back to the business side of things, and we work with some Fortune 500 companies, and they're looking to level up and get AI introduced. But what I see today are just like task forces, or maybe there's one or two people that are focused on AI. How do you see the evolution of adoption of AI and how it gets integrated into every business function across a Fortune 500 company?
What you've just described is champions. You want to find good champions, but it goes back to the use cases. For finance, in FP&A, they're always interested in forecasting models, right? They have use cases for generative AI. If you look at supply chain operations, right, there's predictive maintenance in the plants, right? There's, dealing with weather reports. So you want to find good use cases. That's how you build champions. And then being able to, as Fuad was talking about, finding those stakeholders to champion those in each one of those business functions. And I'm going to speak from my own experience. I actually started with the business functions. I came from a business function. And so technology at the end of the day, again, and I'm speaking just for manufacturing and the industries I've been in, we have to remember that we're manufacturing world-class ingredients. We're manufacturing world-class snacks or beverages or X, right? The focus is on what are those use cases that we can leverage this tool. And start small. Start with a couple of really good use cases that have high impact and can show some very measurable KPIs. That's why I encourage you, whether you're an engineer, a mathematician, or a scientist, really learn what those basic business KPIs are, right? Are you reducing tech debt? Are you increasing operating costs? Are you reducing data consumption? These are very measurable financial KPIs. I would focus on that. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Mm-hmm. You're talking about consensus building. You want to build consensus across the board. Finding repeatable, reusable, and scalable use cases is really where you're going to find common denominators, where you're going to get all of a sudden there's this huge committee of stakeholders because they all cared about RPA. They all wanted to automate this particular process that it's impacting everybody.
Yeah, there are a couple of problems we have seen, especially when we interact with the business and we try to embed AI within business processes. Resistance. Everybody freaks out about it's everything becoming automated, I'm gonna lose my job. Resistance, second is pretty much, I strongly believe before even going after success stories, use cases, you should start with raising the awareness and build your story based on across domains, across industries, across verticals, success story. Another thing we noticed beside resistance is the business side, nobody is patient. AI and ML, there is a journey and the process and the life cycle tied to it. AI starts as a baby. And with the incremental learning, with feeding more data, correcting AI, human in the loop, active learning, AI will get better over time. From the business side, they want 99% next day. That's another level of complexity. Managing expectations, raising the awareness, level set with your business partners, aligning on a plan, make sure you are upfront clear. These are my milestones.
I'll sign off on that.
I will start with, absolutely, I will start with, because coming from academia and from research background and going to corporate environment, you have to learn how to get people excited about this. And like I said, it's today we have to transform, because every day we are losing tremendous amount of data and learnings. We have to start the journey. 5 years from today, our AI will reach 100% accuracy, and at that point in time, we will start measuring our KPIs. But upfront, if you are ROI driven, that will help you and shorten the journey.
But I think the last thing that's also important is you got to train your people. You can't force change down, and then the first thing you're going to get when you push it is getting people to push you back, right? So people tend to do things that they're good at. So you got to train them and make them enjoy the new thing instead of having the change that, top down, this is happening. I think what Ari said earlier about business requirement, business analysts, data engineers, data scientists, those are all very important type of jobs. But I think you need to get your people to be one. Encompass all of those skill sets, understand the business, but also have the skills. And that's what we look at engineers. People would ask me, so how do you work with businesses, at Meta? I was like, you are the business. Engineers, you make decisions about what to build, when to build, and how to build it. And that's how you can get your company, your organization be successful.
Yeah,
and that's the key, it's the people.
It's more tricky for non-technology companies. It is way more challenging because you are pretty much like changing the mindset. Go ahead.
The incentives have to be aligned. I've heard stories where folks take a supply chain problem where we're trying to optimize inventory, and the folks responsible for maintaining the inventory levels, they're judged on whether or not they're meeting the demand of their customers. So if some algorithm is telling them you can actually reduce the inventory by this level and save the company money, they may not be incentivized to listen to those recommendations if they're simply judged by are they meeting 100% of the demand. You have to make sure that you're getting buy-in and the incentives are aligned to get adoption.
Just to add one quick thing, one strategy we use is we search for the adopters first, even if it's a small population. And the adopters will influence the resistant.
Well, cool. Well, we have time for one more, and then I'm going to stick around at least an hour. I don't know if everyone else is, but do one question, then we'll do a wrap-up.
Great panel, thanks. Just one question around intellectual property. If I use a language model to generate code, and I use it in my application, or I use data that's generated or text that's generated in my application or business function, how do you think about who owns the derived work for that? Is that a concern I should be worried about, or what's your thoughts on it?
Really interesting that you asked that question, because IP is such a hot topic, especially in tech. But IP is also kind of important in manufacturing as well, because believe it or not, IP in business, at least in manufacturing, supply chain operations, just one process is considered IP, right? Selling the process. So have a think about what that means, right? So if you're using generative AI to give you a baseline and then you, if you will, improve it, I'd say it's yours. Right? And just think about the percentage or how much or how little you're manipulating the output in order for it to meet its objective. And then the other thing is at the end of the day, it may be owned by your employer, depending on your agreement with them. So I think that's a question that's out of my pay grade. I'd probably ask an attorney about that, an IP attorney in particular.
Read the TOS, the term of service.
Yep.
One thing is for generative AI, the generated outcome, you can't claim it as IP. That said, because the model was trained on tremendous amount of data, and the model was like what Helen was saying is, it's about like what is the probabilistic relationship between words, and the model will be picking pieces of text from different sources and put together more useful outcome. With that, you can't claim the output of generative AI as an IP. Second is feeding your intellectual property assets. It could be text, it could be process, it could be your secret sauce, it could be trade secret. Within generative AI, keep in mind, if it is a third-party company, the generative AI are equipped to learn from your input, from your prompt, and potentially your intellectual property will be exposed to your competitor. You don't want your competitor to put a prompt in one of the service saying, "Hey, what's the strategy of my ex competitor?" And guess what? It can be exposed. I think, especially with the IP, which is the core of creativity and the secret sauce and the competitive advantage of our companies, we have to be really, really careful of what to feed and if we can claim the output as an IP.
Great. Well, do we have time for any more? Are we good?
I think we're going to open up networking again. So if you have more questions, feel free to come meet our panelists. And thank you all for attending. Thank you to our panelists for taking time out of their day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead. Grab drinks.
Hey, thanks,
Continue to
everyone.
mingle.
That was amazing.